Hello everyone, I'm number one Marmaduke fan. Summa Trigerum, Summa Spoilerum, Summa Tangentum. I was on Cop Squad bad for my first take on this vid, so I gave up after about 20 cops. So, a couple days ago I posted a video titled Dear Comicsgate, which was a response to that umbrella guy on whether it's a good idea for the Comicsgate hashtag to be retired, and what what people were talking about is whether Comicsgate is a bad hashtag, whether it creates the potential of people being labeled. And I essentially argued that I love the people in Comicsgate, I love the community in Comicsgate, but if you were to hire me and pay me $1 million to be an expert marketer for the Comicsgate community. Pepsi has a great logo. What can Comicsgate do to have a brand that's as recognizable and well loved as Pepsi or Crest toothpaste? And my advice as a professional marketer would be drop the Comicsgate hashtag. Now you owe me $1 million. So I do not think it's a good hashtag because it doesn't tell anybody anything about what you're trying to accomplish. And the reason people used it is because there are some ideas in common with Gamergate, where there was a feeling that social justice politics and radical feminism were invading video games, which are supposed to be fun. And similar things are invading comic books, which are supposed to be fun, escapist fantasy. They are inherently problematic. They are inherently against a radical feminist lens's view of what good storytelling should be. But let's push that aside. So the reason I'm kind of kicking myself is shortly after I finished that video, I then watched the Diversity in Comics channel do his video on hashtag Move the Needle. And I was thinking, oh, I wish I could have talked about this, because hashtag Moves the Needle illustrates quite a lot of what I was talking about in my earlier video on why I think the hashtag Comicsgate should be retired. I was already planning to do a video that was kind of a follow-up talking about everybody's feedback that they've given me that I've found helpful, maybe addressing a few good points that have been brought up in counter to the argument I was trying to make, and maybe just think a little deeper on the issue. But I think hashtag Move the Needle needs, we ought to think about this too, because if you think about hashtag Move the Needle, it doesn't immediately tell a person who doesn't know what it is what it's about. They'll say, oh, hashtag Move the Needle? Well, what's that? But the good thing is if you show a whole bunch of pictures of comic books you've bought, and you've talked about how people on YouTube have recommended comic books to you and you've gone out and purchased them, then they'll immediately understand what Move the Needle is. You're moving the needle by showing that you are a customer, by showing that you make purchases. So I don't think it's like the greatest hashtag ever invented, but I love this hashtag, and I think this is much better than hashtag Comicsgate, because let's compare and contrast. We're imagining a person who doesn't know anything about comics or Comicsgate or social justice or conservative or liberal politics, just someone who likes superheroes. And you ask and they're learning about these hashtags for the first time. And the question is, what are they going to think these hashtags mean based on how they're being used? So if they search Comicsgate on Twitter, and they'll see lots of discussion of comics, they'll see some salty debates back and forth, and if you're lucky, they'll go back far enough to see that the hashtag caught on when a secret Facebook group was set up for people to make plans essentially to harass the Diversity in Comics channel until they wanted to trigger his PTSD and get him to get into a fight with them so they could have him arrested or kicked out. It was a very unprofessional Facebook group, right? And then that's when the hashtag caught on. But good luck if they bother reading that deeply to see the history of the hashtag. They'll probably just assume it's something like Gamergate, and they'll have no clue what the heck people are arguing about. In contrast to that, Move the Needle is a much more powerful idea, because Move the Needle isn't about, oh man, this bad thing happened, this pro did something bad and we're upset about it, and people might not care one way or the other. What Move the Needle says is, I am a customer and I actually purchase comic books, therefore my opinion should matter to the comics book industry. I think it's essentially the Diversity in Comics whole hot dog vendor argument summarized into 3 words. It's great. And the reason that's great is I'm someone who thinks a lot about radical feminism and the philosophy of social justice. But for a lot of people, they just want to read good comic books. And what's great about Move the Needle is it's not some like 88, it's not like some 300-page treatise carefully refuting every bad argument from the social justice left. It's 3 words that says, I am a customer, I have money, which to people who care about making money in the comic book industry is a powerful argument, because you're saying you are the one who actually buys the product. If someone's like a radical social justice warrior and they don't care about making money, if all they care about is advancing their little cliques set of beliefs or set of I don't even think it's so much a well thought out philosophy as it is a little students club that's about being catty to people to make yourself feel superior. So people like that don't care about being financially successful because they have a very rigid idea of what moral art should be. Moral art is only art if it advances radical, progressive politics. The personal is political. All the quotes I'm reading about in feminist art theory about how they see art and politics as one. I want to raise alarm bells on this and get people in Comicsgate to care about radical feminist art theory. You may not care much about radical feminist art theory, but my whole point is that if you read it and look at what these people have to say, it's like this mask whips off your face and suddenly, oh, that's what social justice warriors are talking about. Oh, it makes so much more sense. The personal is political. Of course they want to ruin comic books. Of course. So I did a series of tweets using the Move the Needle hashtag because I wanted to make a point, and I think this is a point that's so worth making. I'm going to do a video on it, maybe to help explain my point if the tweet thread itself isn't obvious. So Comic Chemist retweeted my first tweet in this thread, and I get a kick out of it. Behold the power of one guy reading comics on his lap. And that's in reference to the Diversity in Comics channel. And then I kind of joked back, another guy reading comics on his lap. Because for most of my channel, I've taken that very unprofessional shot on an iPhone approach until I can get my act together and really get serious about making professionally edited videos. But let's look at my tweet thread, because I think this is going to make my point for me. So my first tweet is hashtag Move the Needle thread. I'd estimate I've spent about $1,000 on comics since watching early Diversity in Comics vids. He's directly responsible for most of these purchases and indirectly responsible for all of them. Other YouTubers have helped sell me on about 30% of those purchases. So something weird I did is I didn't show the comic books that Diversity in Comics is shown in hard sell. I'm probably just going to go look for all of those at my next visit to the comic book shop since I'm going weekly now. But I showed all the comics I have bought since being inspired by the Diversity in Comics channel to get back into comic books and to support comic book shops. So even though most of the things I've shown on this were not directly recommended by Diversity in Comics, his channel is responsible for me doing this. And one point I'd like to make is that Diversity in Comics has the largest audience in this community. Who's we? What's this community? I'd say a community of people who love comic books and want the industry to do well and want professionals to behave like professionals online. I think that's the unifying thing, which transcends politics or religious beliefs or political party. So, having said that, this is true. Everything you see in this thread, I bought after being prompted by watching Diversity in Comics videos to get back into comics. First trickle that started the stream, my very first video talking about the Legend of Zelda manga. I picked that up at a whim from my regular comics shop. I show pics of several of the 50-cent comic books I bought purely because not only did Diversity in Comics encourage me to buy comic books again, but stress the importance of the local comic book shop. And at first I kind of said, well, I'll go support a local comic book shop because no skin on my nose. I get a comic either way. But since then, I've had personal experiences of my own, which reinforce this point. So it's not just something Diversity in Comics told me. I now personally believe that we need good comic book shops for the sake of the industry, and you'll see why. So took a risk buying about $150 worth of 50-cent books purely to support at LCS. It's been a journey reading a lot of these too. Obviously, I just picked up all kinds of junk out of the 50-cent bin. Some of them were not that great. Low battery. Here we go, guys. And then since he recommended 80s and 90s Marvel comics, I started looking for those in the 50-cent bin as well. So I got Wonder Man #1, Pantheon, which was just okay. I thought it was a bit preachy. I was already interested in DuckTales, but I wouldn't have bought this and quite a few others without hashtag Comics Twitter encouraging me to support a store and read some Duck comics. So yes, the diversity in comics, again, is to blame for me going to comic book shops and spending my money there. But also broader comics Twitter, hashtag comics on Twitter, are responsible for me wanting to check out more Donald Duck comics by reminding me that these are actually really good comics and really good adventure stories. And so I bought one volume of the Don Rosa, Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck library. My family bought me another as a gift, and I've bought tons of IDW Disney comics since then. One of my first trade paperback also got Jenny Tartakovsky's Cage! Which I didn't review, but donated to a kids book drive after reading. If you don't know this about me, I've mentioned this in older vids, but I donate about 75% of my comic books after I finish reading them because I just don't want to store them forever. I'm not speculating. I only save comic books that I think are so amazing I'm semi-speculating. I'm guessing that they'll be expensive in the future if I ever want to buy them again. But I actually want to keep them and read them and reread them over and over and over again. Hashtag G.I. Joe was a franchise I had zero interest in. Purchased a digital trade after enjoying these three. So again, not only is the Diversity in Comics channel encouraging people to come back into comic books, he's raising awareness of franchises people may not have cared about. I did not care about G.I. Joe. I missed that boat. I gave it a shot. I got interested in indie franchises like White Picket Fences. I found great artists like Danielle Zizelge. I bought every single Marvel True Believer $1 comic, and I think I bought every single one, so I didn't fill people with a bunch of tweets about every single one. But my favorite is John Romita Sr.'s work for Star Wars Droids. My boy, I misspelled his Twitter handle, sorry, but Aliens Fan Zero, he got me interested in Aliens comics, so I just picked one up. Yeah, and I dug the art. It was better than some SJW Marvel stuff. I rediscovered Dick Giordano, who I hadn't seen since I was a little kid. I picked up the Nintendo Power comics for Super Mario Adventures and The Legend of Zelda. I think the Zelda review is scheduled for a little later this month. There's the Christmas present I got of Volume 3 of Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck. All right, this I need to underscore. I had zero interest in Valiant, but my comic book shop owner loaned me his personal copy of Ninjak and Exo Man of War as a way of trying to encourage me to give Valiant a shot. So this was the experience which told me that we need comic book store owners to make this work, because I would never have bought a Valiant comic in my life without someone who cared about Valiant giving me a couple good books that are representative, which represent the strength of the company well. I've bought other Valiant comics since then, which I didn't think were as strong as these two trade paperbacks, but the comic book store owner's passion helped me care about a franchise and a company I didn't care about. I've given away comic books as a way of getting other people interested in the industry. I've bought comics by people who are rude and abusive to fans online because I was just buying a bunch of 50-cent comics and I didn't pay attention to the name when I picked it up. So I got a Greg Rucka one, whatever. I got a whole bunch of $1 ones that were okay. For $1, they were worth it. And I got some that surprised me. So for 50 cents, I got The Sixth Gun and I got Killing the Cobra. And I loved both. I would have paid full price for both of these comics. I tried Ethan Van Sciver's video on Dynamite encouraged me to check out Dynamite books. So I got The Living Corpse, which I didn't like. I think the artists show some promise, but I didn't like it. And I got Animal Jam, the comic book. Why? Because Ethan Van Sciver pumped the Dynamite company a little bit. All right, so the point I'm trying to make is I've got a ton of comic books here, right? But that's just a tiny little portion of the comics I bought in the past few months. That's about 10% of what I bought. So then I write, here's the kicker. Before watching Diversity in Comics, I had zero digital comics. Here's my library now. About 40% Marvel, 30% DC Comics, and 30% IDW Publishing. Hashtag move the needle. Use this hashtag and at me if I or others have encouraged you to buy comics this year. So you'll notice I didn't show any DC or Marvel comics, not that many in that entire pile. That was mostly indie books and 50-cent books. Okay, so remember, I had zero digital comics before Diversity in Comics, about over 500 digital comics after Diversity in Comics. And this is mostly me buying physical comics where they have the digital code, redeeming the digital code. And then, like I do with most of my comics, I can give the physical away, donate it to a little kid's book drive. So not only am I supporting the comic book industry, I am giving free comic books to kids to get them potentially hooked on comics. And I'll give away really good books. I'll give away bad books. There have only been like 2 or 3 books that I thought were so terrible I didn't want to give those to kids, and I'm going to punish them later this year. I'm going to come up with a creative, artistic, Bob Rossi style punishment. Oh, and then I joked at the end that the Diversity in Comics fans convinced me to read My Hero Academia. So famously, Diversity in Comics, everybody wanted him to read My Hero Academia. He couldn't get over the weebishness. Well, he didn't convince me to read My Hero Academia. You guys all convinced me to read My Hero Academia. Oops, I ran out of battery. What I was going to say was that I have to admit that some of these comic books are free comic book day comics, but I'd say about more than 300 of them are physical comic books I purchased from Marvel and DC and then redeemed the digital code. And even for a lot of my IDW books, the Disney comics, I enjoyed them so much I went and bought the digital edition on Google Play anyway. So I bought them twice because I want to read and reread those IDW Disney comics. And I wanted to send the signal to IDW, make more of those Disney comics. So why did I make this thread? The reason I made this thread is I think Move the Needle is a much better hashtag than Comicsgate. And it says everything positive that we've been trying to say. So Comicsgate is a negative hashtag. It focuses on bad behavior of comic book professionals. And you might have a hard time explaining to anyone what Comicsgate is about. Is it about one particular argument, or is it about 100 disparate arguments over any number of topics? Move the Needle is a positive statement. What is Move the Needle about? It is about buying comic books based on not just the recommendation of Diversity in Comics. He's important. He started me doing this, but on the recommendation of everyone on comics Twitter and all the comics YouTubers I've been introduced to. And I think we need to use this hashtag to let people know who is helping us find these comics and find these creators. And I think this will create good cred for us. There's a lot of debates going on that I can't get into right now because this is so off the cuff. I'm going to take my time and think about some of these, but they're essentially problems of what do you do if we agree that social justice warriorism is a problem? What do we do in response? Because some people might be more laid back about it. Some people might be more gung-ho about it. There may be debates about whether this or that action is moral, or if it's not an argument over morality, it might be an argument over strategy. What is good strategy versus what's a dumb strategy? Well, I can't comment on all those, hundreds of mini debates, but I think hashtag Move the Needle is a very smart strategy because it is a strategy of saying we are the customer. That's what I was thinking of. My boy Eric Hutflis, who illustrated the drawing I've used in several of my videos. Fantastic artist. I'm sure you've interacted with him on Twitter. If you care about comics, you've probably seen him chat in comics. He in one of my comments said he wishes it could be something like hashtag customers, but catchier. And he's exactly right. What the positive message needs to be to the comic book industry is we are customers. We love comics. We care about comics. We want it to succeed. Like Diversity in Comics jokes about, we want them all to be stinking rich. And we're that meme of Stephen Fly or whatever saying, here, take my money. We want the comics industry to succeed, and we want to read good comic books and be treated kindly by pros. And hashtag Move the Needle makes that argument to pros who aren't necessarily die-hard, zealots for social justice warriorism as almost a religious idea. If you're not willing to die for social justice warriorism, money is a really strong argument for giving the what I hope will become the former Comicsgate community what they want. So one problem with Move the Needle is it's not quite as good as Comicsgate as identifying a group of people who see themselves as a group or a movement, want something to call themselves. The abolitionists wanted to abolish slavery. The pro-life movement wants to they want to protect the lives of unborn children. The pro-choice movement wants to protect a woman's right to choose. People want an identifier for what they believe and what their group thinks about. Comicsgate problem is we generally dislike SJW, social justice warriorism in comic books, but there's no unifying philosophy. I'm a conservative Christian. You may not be conservative. You may not be a Republican. You may not have any religious faith. You may have a different religious faith. Okay, so we don't have a unifying banner that we can all unite under and all agree upon. But what we do have is a love of comic books, and we have a shared concern for social justice warrior politics creeping its way into comic books. Hashtag move the needle means we are significant. We're not a few randos online. We love comics, and I think we need a positive dimension to the argument we're making. If you care about the comic book industry, I think it's at a point where it either could go or it could recover. Some people think it's too late, that SJW Marvel and SJW DC, that's the future. It's inevitable. They're inevitably going to collapse and become social justice indoctrination machines making propaganda. Maybe. I don't know yet because I can't read the future. I think we're at a crisis point where these companies and these characters we love could go away and just become garbage, or they could, Captain Cummings, jokey hashtag, make Marvel great again. They could be made great again so that everyone can love them, regardless of political party or political leaning. But we need a positive argument to say that we can help these companies make money if they agree to make good comics again and promote professional behavior from their employees online again. That's all I wanted to say. I've probably said it 2 or 3 times because summa tangentum, one of the things about this channel. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Catch you later.